No.
All right, now we're recording. So, Irvin, erosion of personal ownership.
What I just say? Oh yes, of like the case of DVDs. People aren't buying them, and people aren't buying them anymore because Netflix, Hulu. You can just use those services, but you don't actually own that thing anymore. And that is true for a lot of physical things like John Deere and other stuff. As just as you said, as we move more towards the cloud and cloud services, we're not actually owning the thing we're buying anymore. We're more renting.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that's a bad thing, but I know some people like to think I live in a mansion and I pass it on to my grandchildren and stuff. Kind of people that want to have books on paper. I got rid of all my physical books long ago. I'm very glad, but this is temporary system so I can be more mobile. I remember Richard Stallman, the guy who's highly controversial and got canceled and uncanceled. I saw his talk and he said, the Amazon Kindle, I call it the swindle. You don't really own those books. They can suck the book back off your Kindle, and they did a couple of times, so that's awful.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is kind of like the cryptocurrency people that say, you have to have something that no one can possibly control or take away from you. And I'm just not so sure. I think you live in a society, there's cops, there's banks, there's laws, there's various people can come mess with you, and it's really okay. That's why you have a system of controls. Yeah. Anyway, but it certainly is true that we used to buy software in a box and install it with floppies, and then it would just be running on our one machine. And it is totally not true. When you look at a page, it's not true that that's all running on your machine. It's running on a bunch of other people's machines under their control.
Right.
Don't copy that floppy.
Yeah, that's right. Don't copy that floppy, as if it would matter anymore.
Yeah.
now that floppy would just let you run something that connects to the cloud anyway. So.
Right.
So, well, here's some stuff I guess you can own. Apple's got some stuff. Alan's got the latest Apple stuff.
Yes, this is a perfect segue. Speaking of ownership and what you can and cannot control, Apple on Tuesday announced a slate of new products and updated products. And for those who were just dying to get an updated iMac, this answered all prayers. The new iMac, not only is it equipped with the M1, new Apple M1 CPU, and a significantly slimmer profile. It's just amazingly thin. It's like an iPad thin computer now. They're also available in several colors. So the aluminum has been specially anodized in a rainbow of different colors. They're bringing back the old iMac aesthetic from 20 years ago, in which you could buy several different colors of plastic iMacs with the old CRT screens. Now you can get different colors of anodized aluminum iMacs.
I remember those things. They looked like VW bugs.
Yeah. And at the time, that product was hailed as this example of great design.
Oh, yeah. They were pretty. I think they didn't actually work very well, but they were pretty.
Yeah, they were pretty. And there was even a copy installed at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. But since then, of course, everyone's just forgotten about it. Yeah. So, we'll see how long this new M1 iMac catches people's attention. But, it's something pretty to look at. But as far as repairability is concerned, we don't know how good or bad that iMac is going to be. The answer is probably not at all repairable. You can't do anything to it. Can't upgrade the RAM or the storage, probably.
That would be on brand. But there wasn't. Apple.
What's that?
That would be on brand for Apple.
Absolutely on brand. But in a surprisingly non-on brand move, Apple also released this new dongle, AirTag, as they're calling it.
Oh, yeah.
Which allows you to attach it to something that, like your keys or your suitcase or your backpack, that you want to keep track of and that you might misplace. And this AirTag actually allows you to replace the battery inside of it. So that was a groundbreaking move from Apple, in which you can actually maintain your Apple device.
That AirTag, I might actually have to get some of them. There are a few objects, like I've actually lost a laptop, and I'm surprised how few I've lost. I keep thinking, I'm going to forget this someday.
Anyway. Well, they've got the Find My app, and
they do.
apparently, I don't. use Find My app, but apparently you can integrate Find My with your iPhone, your iMac, your MacBook, and these new AirTags. And so
Yeah.
you could track your missing objects. And if somebody has an iPhone, their iPhone, if it's close enough to the AirTag, will actually report the location through Apple's network to you
Yeah.
via that other person, a third-party device. Which,
Yeah, as long as you sign in with your iCloud or something.
yeah. So the whole thing is it does present some security concerns. Although Apple is reassuring us that they've taken measures to prevent people from, say, dropping an AirTag into somebody else's backpack or attaching it to somebody else's car and using that to track them.
How could they prevent that? Actually, that sounds like an awesome use case.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the concern. And I'm not clear on the specifics, exactly what Apple has done to prevent these sorts of things, but I'm a little skeptical at the same time, because as far as the AirTag is concerned, that AirTag that's attached to somebody's tailpipe is just a missing backpack that's in the trunk.
Yeah, I mean, think this could be a boon for stalkers.
Yes.
In
You
fact,
know,
yeah.
I had a friend visit this weekend, and I knew that she was coming, and I just happened to walk outside and open the garage door for her at the exact time she pulled up, and she had this look on her face, and she goes, "Well, how did you know?" And I just said, "Oh, it's just the tracking device I put on your car." And she had this look of like total horror on her face, and it's like, well, I guess she's known me for over 20 years, so I guess see how she could take me seriously, even though I was totally joking.
I've heard Kaitlyn say that, and I really don't know if it's joking or not.
That's the problem with us. I guess you never really do know.
I went to a conference like 10 years ago, and the Wi-Fi wasn't working. So I turned on my hotspot and said, "Hey, you can connect to my hotspot." And people looked at me and said, "I'm not connecting to your hotspot. You're a hacker." And I'm like, "Oh, gee, guys, I wouldn't do anything bad, honest." And they didn't buy it. Anyway, I know people are afraid of us. Anyway, so here, this is the one that I've been spending like a lot of time dealing with harassment from. So there's a tweet from a guy that says, "The open secret, in case you don't know, blockchain is crap. All serious developers, everybody in the industry laughs at blockchain." I thought this was common knowledge. There was an XKCD about a year ago where they talked about security of voting. And at one point they said, "Oh, they have a new system using blockchain." And all the experts say, "Oh my God, don't go near that. Bury it in the desert, wear gloves." We all know blockchain is horrible, but now all the enthusiasts are, "Oh, blockchain is great, to the moon, we're all going to get rich." And there's just a little short Twitter thread here of a guy saying, "We've noticed that blockchain's been around for years and it never does anything good. It's just a scam." And I mean, if you want a database, you already have centralized database. And if you want to make a backup copy someplace to keep it intact, you can do that. And beyond that, all the rest of blockchain accomplishes nothing except to waste an incredible amount of electricity. And so anyway, that's a fun fact, because now since Musk jumped in, blockchain and cryptocurrency have become a thing. It's going to be a big thing. And now Visa is in, JP Morgan is in. So this ship is sailing. It's sort of like the Republican Party. I don't believe it's going anywhere good, but it's going. So that's why I'm going to be teaching a class, and I'm going to teach blockchain next semester in my crypto class, because there are jobs. But for God's sake, don't fool yourself in thinking you're actually doing something good here, or it's going somewhere. It's just a job. But you can totally get a job for the next few years programming blockchains while everybody finishes convincing themselves that it's crap. And it's also remotely conceivable that I'm wrong. And there is actually some value in this thing that all those rich, important people see that I just failed to see. So anyway, I'll cover it, despite the fact that I think it's garbage, because I remember I had this argument in my college years ago where someone said, Microsoft Office is garbage. We shouldn't use it. We shouldn't teach it. And I'm like, dude, it doesn't matter if it's garbage. What matters is whether there are jobs in it. We are the servants of industry. We are not the leaders of industry. If there's a job in it, we teach it, even if you don't believe in it. There's no point concealing for students that you might think it's no good, but the fact is you'll get a job by learning this, so learn it. That's my feeling. It's a vocational college from my point of view. But
Yeah, I've had in my career in tech, I've had to learn to use tons of crappy solutions in search of problems.
yeah, it's a thing that happens. And of course, I'd say sort of like the moonshot, there will be side benefits to blockchain. It's funding an incredible amount of research in cryptography. Lots of interesting new cryptography is coming out of it. So when they're done ripping everybody off and stealing their money with scams based on blockchain, there will be a few side benefits that may last.
Well, and I think there's a lot to be said for, distributed and decentralized computing in general. So, maybe I can see ways that the architecture could be applied to something else
What's the
useful.
benefit of this kind of distributed computing? I'm not sure I see it.
That's a lengthy conversation, but when there's an argument to be made that by decentralizing your computing, you can prevent the control of certain digital assets from falling to conglomerates. It democratizes things somewhat.
That's the idea. It's basically gold. You have an object that cannot be controlled by any government.
Right.
And, as far as money goes, government control is not a bad thing, I think. But
No, what I'm saying is I can see ways that this could apply to other assets other than money.
well, if you think of an actual use case for blockchain, now's the time you could get rich, because everybody wants to use it, but nobody can figure out what it's good for. That's exactly. So if you have an actual use case for blockchain, make a startup. Let me know. Anyway, then we got the big one from Liz, Cellebrite. This is the most fun story this week by far.
It's very exciting. And it's got, everybody's talking about it. Lots of folks are talking about it. So Moxie Marlinspike of Signal fame has discovered that Cellebrite's malware has some holes in it. And one of the most exciting ones is that you can put a dirty file on your device that would cause the investigator or whoever is using the Cellebrite spyware to forensically investigate the contents of your phone. You can blow their machine up if you want to, because it turns out that like so much malware, Cellebrite has been developed using less than secure software development principles and will allow for code execution from the target device.
Well, let me just jump in and put a bit of background that people might not know. Cellebrite is something police agencies buy. It's hardware to take evidence off a phone and then testify in court. And all of them rely on that evidence being accurate and reliable and trustworthy in court. And Moxie has just ruined that.
Yes, and thank you for adding that bit of context. I was just so excited about it.
I know.
So excited about it. I just jumped right in.
I mean,
and it's not just the cops, it's also the FBI and
yeah,
various world governments and stuff. So
yeah, he's really rocked the boat here.
Pretty awesome. And I remember something a few years ago from, I want to say it was Encase or one of the other, forensic tools, where it was sort of a similar deal. And you could...
that was Encase's whole marketing thing, is that their stuff is trusted in court.
Yeah, but they had I believe it was them, and I could be wrong. It could have been one of the other... It could have been one of the other forensics software, but I know that people were able to crash that by using certain kinds of file compression, where once the image was the disk image was fed into Encase, it would the compressed file would decompress into something massive and then just crash everything.
Yeah, zip bomb.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I think it was Encase. So
Oh, yeah.
it's pretty good. It's pretty good that you can find these ways to you can find these ways to undermine their attempts to investigate your devices.
Yeah, and the thing I thought was really bold was at the end, Moxie says, and on an unrelated note, we're going to start adding random extra files to Signal. So every phone with Signal on it will have these extra files that we've just added for no good reason. So he's suggesting that he's going to put these poison files that will corrupt the data on your phone if you run Signal, so that this means anybody that uses this evidence in court will have probable cause for doubt, saying, and even if Moxie never does put those files on there, he has opened up the can of worms. Of course, there is a good answer, because I used to teach forensics, all this stuff. And the answer is you never trust just one tool. Every tool has bugs and defects. So you verify everything with a second tool. So in the grand scheme of things, a competent forensic investigator would not find their case destroyed by this. But I know Encase, and I think also Cellebrite, market their tool by saying you can take a cop and put them through a 3-hour training course, and now they're a forensic investigator. And all they know is click on this, click on that, out comes the report, go testify in court. And that means you totally trust the tool to be perfect. And of course, the tool is very far from perfect. So I think a lot of their marketing and their sales depend on this sort of very sloppy use of the product.
Yes. And the other thing though is too, I don't think that there's, well, I'm not sure. This has changed, but there hasn't been much in the way of competition for Cellebrite. So it would be difficult to get a good assay of different tools for your evidence, I think.
Yeah, there are others, but Cellebrite and Encase are like the big ones. And also the other fun thing is the whole reason they did this is because they attacked Moxie first. Cellebrite claimed that they had broken the encryption in Signal, and Moxie is the world's leading cryptographer. Really, he's one of the top three, and his whole thing is Signal is encrypted, and I really made sure it's encrypted in a good way. Nobody can break in. And Signal said we broke in, and all they did was they found a way to copy the files off your phone that you had received in Signal. So they didn't actually break the Signal encryption. And that's what made Moxie mad. He said, you idiots, you didn't break my Signal encryption. You just stole the files off the endpoint. And now that you've annoyed me, let's take a look at your product.
Right. Always good to wave a red flag in front of the bull.
Exactly. This has happened a few times. There are certain people you just don't want to mess with, and Moxie is one of them.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, all right, so then we got Ubuntu 21 with Irvin.
Yes, Ubuntu 21.04 is out. It has native Active Directory integration.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Wow, even Macs don't have that. That sounds like a real selling point.
Yes. Yes, besides a bunch of other things that it can do now, the thing that stuck out to me was it has native Active Directory integration.
I might actually use it and test that out. That's interesting.
Yeah, that could make life so much easier.
It's been really hard to stick Linux machines in Active Directory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think Microsoft makes it easy.
Yeah, I don't think each other have made it easy, but apparently now you can configure system settings from an AD controller.
Boy, I bet that doesn't work worth a damn. It would be fun to play with.
Worth a shot.
Oh, absolutely.
Worth a shot.
That's a good headline. Right, Alan's got Palestinian hackers.
Yeah, Facebook has dropped some information, some IOCs, and banned some accounts that are associated with 2 different APTs that are affiliated with Palestinian political groups. And this is news to me. I did not know that there were not 1 but 2 Palestinian political hacking groups out there, but there are. One of them is called, what is the name again? Arid Viper, which is associated with Hamas
Oh,
and has been active for a while, as it turns out.
Hmm.
The other one is called the Preventive Security Service, and it's an intelligence group, not just a hacking for hire team, but an intelligence group that's part of the Fatah ruling party in the West Bank. And both of these threat actors have apparently, for the past couple of years, been targeting political activists, journalists, a select group of people that may conflict with their political aims. And not only are they hacking these journalists and targets in the usual ways, they're actually developing their own custom toolkits, in particular for iOS and Android. So they've become rather sophisticated, especially for not exactly technically state-sponsored groups, and they were able to get away with it for a couple of years. So this is a far cry from, say, the electronic intifada of 15 years ago, where some Palestinian hackers were able to break into a few Israeli government websites and a few Israeli corporate websites and just do a defacement. Now these are not quite state actors, but sophisticated intelligence groups developing their own toolkits that are not relying on the NSO group or other commercial hacking tool providers, and they're having some real success in attacking their targets.
yeah. You know, that's part of what's so exciting about this field is this is like the early days of electricity, when just somebody with no money and a few gadgets in their garage can make something awesome. You don't need to be part of a huge organization or funded by a government or anything.
Yeah, it doesn't require nearly the investment of developing conventional weapons, for example. And
Yeah.
it does require a lot of know-how and development of talent. But apparently, the Hamas and the Palestinian government has been able to accomplish just that.
Well, I think this is part of what leads to the whole DEF CON versus the suits thing. There's a certain percentage of people who just love this, and they're like 14 years old and are just in their room figuring everything out. And, you know,
Yeah.
you don't really need to train them. They figure it out themselves. So yeah, that's very interesting. I know Palestinian hackers hacked my website about 15 years ago in minor ways, and I got some criticism because I just left up the defacement. This guy got into my page and inserted "Long live Palestine, freedom for everyone," and I just left it up. I said it's a fair cop. He hacked me. Anyway. Right. So then quantum astronomy. This one I thought I was very interested in this. See, an interferometer is where you have a beam of light. You split it into two halves with a half silvered mirror, and then you recombine that light and you can see an interference pattern as the waves collide. And if you make a telescope that picks up the light from the same star, and you make, say, two telescopes 100 yards apart, you can get a very high resolution picture of the spatial structure of that by correlating the light between those two telescopes, but you have to correlate it perfectly. And so one way to do it is you take the photons and you put them in an optical fiber, and they travel to a point in the middle where you mix them. That's an interferometer with a long baseline, and that gives you a very high degree of resolution. The problem is you can't do that too far, or after around 10 kilometers, the signal degrades too much in the optical fiber and it doesn't work anymore. And what they'd like to do is make them much bigger. So what they're going to do, they haven't got this working yet, but they're developing all the equipment to make it happen, is have a telescope connected to a quantum hard drive. A quantum hard drive is a series of atoms in spin states cooled down near absolute zero. So you can take the photons you pick up from the astronomy and store the entire quantum structure in a quantum spin state, in an atom, which you can then carry. And they've got prototypes that can retain that information for 6 hours, but they say in principle they can extend that up to 2 months. And so you could record the quantum state of the light from a telescope in one location and another location in quantum hard drives, and then bring them to the same position and then mix them together to see the interference. And this is, of course, a huge step forward for quantum computing. Quantum computing is where you actually start storing quantum states and doing calculations on quantum states that are these weird things that contain a lot more information than our digital bits, and make certain kinds of calculation much faster. But you need new versions of everything. You need quantum processors, quantum RAM, quantum hard drives, quantum cables, and all those components exist in early prototype form. So this is a big step forward, and astronomy is one of the first use cases of these early stage quantum hard drives. So it'd be very interesting to see if they can get that working. And, in 10 or 20 years, all this stuff will be available and cheap, and all our computers will be quantum from the looks of it, and they'll do certain things much faster. Anyway, then Liz has got the Fourth Amendment.
Yes, this is kind of neat and exciting from a policy perspective. So there has been a piece of legislation proposed, allegedly with bipartisan support, that would ban law enforcement agencies from buying data from data brokers, such as Clearview AI, et cetera, so that and it would ban what the bill calls illegitimately obtained information in prosecution, which would also include information that was gathered through deception or hacking in a way that's inconsistent with the privacy policy of the platform that the user entered that information into. So, sounds difficult to enforce, though it sounds like it could introduce some additional evidentiary requirements for court cases, which is pretty interesting. And I certainly think
it sounds unnecessary to me, isn't it? I mean, if you got the data illegitimate, you've already committed a crime and it's already not admissible in court. Is this really needed?
Are you sure it's not admissible in court? I'm not sure that it's not admissible in court.
Well,
because the cops get a lot of passes on obtaining information through deception. They're allowed to buy. They are definitely allowed to buy data from data brokers and use it against people.
But the data brokers presumably had to get that stuff legitimately, right?
No.
Technically, somewhere in that terms of service, you agreed that they were going to sell your data, right? It's not like they stole it.
I don't believe that's the case.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
But even if they did, let's say you agree that. Let's say that you agree that.
Well, it's really all Facebook, right? There's no point pretending there's anything else. This is all Facebook. Facebook.
You're not wrong.
Facebook takes all your data and they sell it to everybody, like Steve Bannon and all these horrible people who then use it to do horrible things. But technically, what they're doing is legal, I think.
Well, so I mean, yeah, it's legal because it's not illegal.
Right.
So this bill would be intended to put in some protections in that area.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, of course, the Fourth Amendment means that private agencies can spy on you, but the government is more restricted in spying on you, supposedly.
Well, they're not, though, because we've talked about this before, where ICE and Customs and Border Patrol have utilized location data from stuff like OnStar and phone tracking and what have you. And they have also targeted stuff like the Muslim prayer apps and things like that.
Yeah.
In order to build dossiers and track around, people with religious preferences they don't agree with. So I think this is a step in the right direction. But
I see it's endorsed by the ACLU and Ron Wyden, and those are definitely good actors.
Yes, I'm not entirely sure how effective it's going to be, but I think that it's definitely a positive. It's a move in the right direction,
I see they got Rand Paul on board.
which is kind of surprising, but
Well, his dad would have been on board. He was real
yeah.
anti-government intrusion type. Yeah, well, it sounds interesting. We'll see if it goes somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And then we got, this is very interesting. Rapid7 bought Velociraptor.
Yeah.
I've been hearing a lot about Velociraptor, and I haven't made it to the training yet, but I guess maybe I better.
Me too. I tried to sign up for that training that they were having, but it was sold out.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, Velociraptor is like an endpoint tool for incident response, and
Kind of
it's
like Splunk.
kind of like Splunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's open source. And it looks like Rapid7 has now added them to the list of tools. Kind of curious to see what they do with it,
Yeah.
since it was an open source and it was picking up interest in the
I was
field.
hearing
So,
about it everywhere.
yeah. So what will they do with it? Who knows? We'll find out.
I guess I should figure out how to get something working and throw it in a Black Hat course. We got a Black Hat IR course coming up.
Yeah.
And obviously, everyone's going to want to see Velociraptor, so I'll see if I can get some of it going.
Yeah.
This is beat the hell out of GERD. Boy, I used to try to use Google Rapid Response, and that thing totally doesn't work at all.
I think it is its competitor. But anyway, it's now with Rapid7.
Yeah, because I wrote a GER project, and pretty soon it didn't work, and it wouldn't install, and it depended on libraries that weren't there, and it just made everybody cry. So I'll see if Velociraptor is better. I hope so. Anyway, then we've got U.S. Air Forces operating without air superiority.
Yes, U.S. Marine Corps General Kenneth McKenzie testified before the House Armed Services Committee on Tuesday and acknowledged that the U.S. is operating, quote, operating without complete air superiority. And he said this in the context of the proliferation of unmanned drones that have been weaponized and used against American forces and others. And this is not news, the fact that there are weaponized drones out there. This has been around for a number of years, over a decade now. But this is, to my knowledge, the first big acknowledgement by the US military that these drones present a very serious threat to the American military. And what it comes down to is, as I understand it, the American military doctrine of having complete technological superiority against all adversaries. Not numerical, but technological. And if the US military does not have that technological advantage, then it's in a much more precarious state. And so this acknowledgement that these small and cheap armed drones are both effective in the field and that the US does not have a good counter to these weapons is an acknowledgement that the military is really paying close attention to this right now. And this is really part of the larger trend that we were just talking about with these two different Palestinian intelligence slash hacking groups, is that thanks to the revolutions in technology, it's no longer incredibly expensive to develop very powerful offensive military or cyber capabilities. And so you suddenly have all these different actors that in the past would have had no chance of approaching American capabilities under any circumstances, now actually have real viable technologies that they can deploy, at least under certain circumstances, that really do challenge American superiority.
Yeah, it makes real sense to me. I mean, I know if you're flying an airplane and you suck up a bird, it can mess up the plane. So it seems like you could just get a little drone and put a little hand grenade on it and bring out an airplane, and you could fly up and drop something nasty on the other troops, and if it's small, it wouldn't cost much or be hard to build, and it wouldn't be easy to detect or to shoot down.
Right. You just send a swarm of tiny drones
Yeah.
and they don't really have to do anything but get in the way of an aircraft. Those get sucked into the engines and that's it for the aircraft. It's going down.
Yeah, and if you put like a little bit of explosive or caltrops in them, you can make them more effective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like cyber. It makes asymmetric warfare much stronger.
Yes.
Yeah. And like I say, the one I'm really waiting for is the drone the size of a mosquito that just flies in and injects you with poison. Once we have that, I think nobody will be safe anywhere. Everybody will have to hide in a basement.
Nanobots, they're coming
Yep.
for us. They're going to replicate just like viruses.
Well, we're not that far from it. I just saw last week the fully reproducing artificial life form. They've now made artificial cells that do reproduce. So we made complete artificial life. So, we might enter these nightmare science fiction scenarios sooner than we thought.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, that's the way it always is. I'm sure you can also make some kind of good benefit, like the beneficial thing that lives in your body that kills all the cancer cells or something. So we'll see. Anyway, in the same spirit of techno terror, someone pointed out this old article, which is great, about the 10 oldest systems in the federal government, and they are mind-boggling. They're the Treasury Department, the IRS, the Defense Department, the Veterans Affairs, more DOD, and the systems are like 46 years old, running on 8-inch floppies on an IBM mainframe. Most of them are running COBOL. It's just mind-boggling how much they're running on Server 2008, running Microsoft.NET and stuff like that. It is truly impressive how many government agencies are running on complete horrible crap that is like 2 whole generations of behind the current times, where there's probably nobody alive that can really maintain these things properly. So it's a pretty hilarious list to look through, and kind of reminds me why I proposed again to teach the COBOL CTF at DEF CON. And when I did that, a lot of people came up and said, yes, COBOL is alive. COBOL is great. COBOL is still around, man. COBOL will never die. Anyway. And the last one is Elizabeth. Oh, with these guys that decided to mess with the Linux kernel developers. Man.
Yes, this is, I complain sometimes about not doing enough research in my graduate program.
Yeah.
What these guys might have done a little too much. So these university researchers thought, hey, let's make our graduate student project. Let's see how feasible it is to sneak vulnerabilities into open source software. So they decided it would be a good idea to just start injecting malicious code into the Linux kernel. For some strange reason, this was an unpopular decision. And the Linux community is pretty unhappy about this. Now, what blows my mind about this, aside from them thinking that this was a good idea in the first place, was that the university where they attend, University of
Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota, their ethics review board signed off on this.
Yeah, they said it was not human research. So apparently
Yes,
they think the
which is
Linux kernel is
insane.
not maintained by humans, I guess.
Which is insane. Who do they think uses computers? Who do they think the end users are? Just
know.
completely nuts. So
Yeah.
I have some serious questions about this institution's ethics board, and I'm not the only one. I think they're going to be under a little bit of scrutiny now.
I would hope so, although I must say, in my experience, I did some medical research and I saw some appalling ethics violations, and I got in trouble for complaining loudly about how nothing is done. But anyway,
It makes you wonder what else is approved. What other kind of ridiculous studies are approved?
I could tell you some stories, but I won't say them right now. There's real Frankensteins out there doing stuff on human research that is unethical as hell. It's really going on. Anyway,
I'm not surprised by this, but the 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 Linux community has decided that they are going to, of course, revert any commits that have come from this institution, and they are banning the entire university and they're anyone with an email address from the school from contributing in the future. Now, I don't know how many teeth that has, because you just make your commits using a different email address,
Yeah.
and then how would they know? But
Yeah, like Wikipedia.
yeah.
Well, of course, now another way to look at this is you could say they're doing a penetration test to test their efficiency at blocking a social engineering attack. And then you might think of them as the good guys.
I think that'd work about as well as this initial experiment, which got them the ban hammer and lots of angry commentary.
Well, yeah, but in the grand scheme of things, this reminds me of the issue about curl. I mean, when you use open source software, you do question the supply chain. And the fact is, there is a serious lack of management and controls.
I think you should question the supply chain no matter what products you're using, open source or not.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, this raises, the big issue. Who's really deciding whether this stuff is trustworthy enough to be in the kernel? And do you really trust them to make good decisions?
Right. Well, it is good that they caught it. I mean,
they-
it wasn't, they did catch it. So
Yeah.
now I'm not sure whether they caught it before the paper notice of publication for the paper came out, because they are presenting it at like some IEEE forum next month. So the articles did not elaborate on whether they caught it or first or found out about it because the researchers published the results.
I think I was reading some article had a link to the actual conversation,
Mm-hmm.
the email chain, and it looked like they caught it after the research came out.
Right.
And then that angry guy, whoever it was who found it, started using the ban hammer on them. And there's a pretty lengthy conversation about debating whether do they just ban the one person, but they ended up just saying, we're just going to ban the whole university.
Yeah.
Well, like a lot of disturbing, unethical research, it might actually result in learning some useful information.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess that's it for this one, and we'll be back on Monday.